Welcome to another video featuring the Toyota Aygo Mark II. This also applies to the Citroen C1 Mark II. This is the C1, and also the Peugeot 108. So these are clones of the Aygo made between 2014 and 2021. And what we're going to do is we're going to fit front and rear dash cams to this C1. And we're going to install it so that it's hardwired into the car's electrical system, so that when you turn the ignition on, the dash cams start recording. So I'm going to show you how to tap into the fuse box, and I'm going to show you where to route the cables. On the Aygo II and its clones, the fuse box is located above the driver's right foot by the A post on the right hand side. So we're going to tap into the electrical system there, and we're going to run the necessary cables up behind the trim, fit a dash cam to the front screen, and then run a cable down to a rear dash cam. Before we do that, before we start work, let's go into the house and we'll have a look at the dash cam we're going to install, and we'll talk about some of the things you need to consider when buying a dash cam, and also some of the additional items you need to install the dash cam and hardwire. Okay, so let's take a look at what kind of dash cam we're going to fit to the car and what you should look at when buying a dash cam. First of all, my advice is to go for a good branded dash cam. There are lots of no-name, very cheap dash cams available, but a dash cam is a little bit like an airbag. It sits there powered up, working away, but when you need it to work, it really does need to work. Okay, so it's no good having one that's got iffy image quality or may crash, whatever. So my advice is to go for a good brand. Well-known brands include Garmin, Blackview, Nextbase, and there's a few others. So we buy a good branded dash cam. We also need to think about how the dash cam mounts into the car. So we've essentially got two ways in which most dash cams mount. One is with a sticky pad mount, so the mount sticks to the windscreen using one of these 3M pads. The other type of mount is the suction cup mount. Okay, so this is a suction cup mount. We press it against the windscreen and rotate the suction cup, and it uses a vacuum to stick to the screen. Now, the suction cups are great, for example, if you want to take a dash cam into a hire car or something, you go on holiday, or it's a car you're driving in the short term, suction cup is fine. My experience is they don't stay stuck to the windscreen in the long term. They do start to give trouble, particularly in hot weather, and it's annoying and possibly a bit dangerous if the thing drops off the windscreen while you're driving. So certainly if we're doing what I would term a semi-permanent installation, if the dash cam's going to be in the car long term, then go for the sticky pad type. Okay. Secondly, the other thing we should look for in the dash cam is GPS. Okay. GPS is really useful for two reasons. The first reason is convenience. Okay. The dash cam will take its date and time setting from the GPS signal. So that means if you leave the car for a long time and the dash cam battery discharges, or you disconnect the dash cam for a while or something, you don't need to re-enter the date and time setting. As soon as the dash cam's powered up, it will take the date and time from the GPS signal. That's really convenient. It's much better than having to mess about continually re-entering dash cam date and time. And the second reason GPS is really useful is that along with the image quality, it will save the dash cam location and speed in the image file. So if you do have an accident or you need evidence from your dash cam, when you transfer the data across, the image across, you'll have exact location and speed data available to you. So that's really useful. So my strong advice is to go with the dash cam that's got GPS. Now the actual dash cam I'm fitting for the lady who owns this car is a Nextbase. I'm actually fitting a Nextbase 422. I've got no affiliation with Nextbase, but I have fitted a number of these Nextbase cameras, and they do seem to be reliable in the long term. Okay, so I fitted some a couple of years ago, and they're still working well, and the users have not had any problems with them. So we've got this particular dash cam model. Obviously, there are a range of dash cams. This is one that has GPS incorporated into it. Okay, and it uses a sticky pad to hold it into the windscreen. Okay, so that's the basic dash cam. We also need a camera for the rear windows. So Nextbase do a rear window camera kit, and that plugs into the front dash cam. Okay, so this mounts in the rear of the vehicle and plugs into the front dash cam. It comes with a 6-meter cable. The other thing we need is a hardwire kit. So what this does is it enables us to power the dash cam off of a tap into the fuse box. In other words, we don't use the cigarette lighter adapter. Cigarette lighter adapter is, again, it's okay if you're using a rental car or something, temporary installation, but in the long term, you really want to hardwire the dash cam into the car's electrical system, so that every time you turn the ignition on, the dash cam automatically powers up and you don't need to think about it, and all the wiring is neatly hidden away. Dash cams don't usually come with a memory card. You have to buy a memory card separately, and in this particular case, as part of this bundle, there was a memory card included. You need to make sure it's a so-called U3 class 10 memory card. A lot of memory cards don't work well with dash cams, and after a period of time will give errors. So make sure you buy a memory card which is of a suitable spec for the dash cam. Okay. So let's now look at the individual components in a little bit more detail and look at what tools we need to fit the dash cam into the car. Okay, let's take a look at the Nextbase camera and the various accessories we're going to use with it. So here's the camera. Still has its protective plastic film on it, and it actually mounts to the windscreen using this sticky pad mount. There's a powerful magnet holds the mount against the camera. I give it a firm tug to pull it away. There are electrical contacts in the camera and on the mount, so the power supply actually connects to the mount, and then we fit the camera to the mount like that. Also in the camera we've got a USB port on top there, which we can use if we remove the camera from the car to connect to a laptop or whatever. And we also have in the side of it a HDMI port, which is for the wired rear view camera. Okay. And then in the side we've got the slot for the SD card. Now they do give you a cigarette lighter power adapter to use with it, which I guess it's useful if you're driving various different cars and you want to move the camera between cars. We're not going to actually use that in this installation. And they also give you a little sort of trim removal tool there to poke the wires behind trim. It's not particularly useful, and I won't be using it in this particular installation. The other thing that we need is the power adapter, the hardwired power adapter. This is a branded Nextbase unit. You can buy sort of cheaper unbranded ones from other suppliers, but these Nextbase ones seem to be reliable. They're not that expensive. They're around about £20, and the quality seems okay. So it comes with several meters of wire here to plug into the camera unit itself. We've got the power supply unit, which steps down the 12 volts from the car to 5 volts for the dash cam. And then we've got a meter or two of wire to connect to the car's electrical system. So we've got the positive 12 volt connection and the vehicle ground connection, which is the black wire. This needs to go to a good ground point on the car. Luckily, on the Aygo, the C1, the 108, there is a small bolt that helps retain the fuse box into the car. And what we do is we slacken that bolt off and we just slip this fork terminal behind the bolt head and then just nip the bolt up tight. And we'll look at that when we're back out of the car. The 12 volt positive connection needs to go to a fuse tapping. Nextbase supply two sizes of fuse tapping. So what these do is they will replace one of the fuses in the fuse box. So we've got a standard size and a mini size. Now on the Aygo and the various clones, we use the mini size fuse connector. So what we're going to do is we're going to use one of the fuse locations in the fuse box. In fact, what we'll do is we'll remove fuse number 5, which is the rear wiper system fuse, and we'll relocate that fuse into the bottom slots there on this fuse tap. The top slots in the fuse tap are for the fuse to the dashcam power supply, and Nextbase supply a 2 amp fuse which goes into that top slot. Okay, so the top slot is for the 2 amp dashcam fuse. The lower slot there is for the 15 amp rear wiper fuse, because we're going to use the rear wiper circuit. Don't tap into a critical circuit, something like ABS or engine electronics or airbag or something like that. Always tap into a non-critical circuit. So if something does go wrong, badly wrong with this, or this drops out of the fuse box, you're going to just lose the rear wiper. You're not going to lose your ABS or your engine or whatever. Okay, and then this tap will go into the fuse number 5 location in the fuse box. Having connected that up, we'll need to tuck the wiring away, hide it away neatly. The next component is the rear camera. So the rear camera comes with about 30 centimeters of wire and a connector on it, and then there's about 6 meters of wire which go down to the camera at the front, and it plugs into the front dash cam. Obviously this is far more cable than we need, so we're going to have to tuck some of the spare cable away behind the trim at the rear of the car. The rear dash cam is this sort of eyeball arrangement. It comes with a magnetic mount, so that sticks to the rear screen glass. There's a powerful magnet in there, and what that does then is sticks itself to the rear camera, which is this eyeball arrangement, and you can move the the rear camera around on this magnetic mount. And then we need to route the cable through and down into the car. Now this arrangement has got a little bit of a flaw with it. It's probably great if you're installing this in a standard saloon car where the rear glass isn't moving, but when you install it on a hatch, you know, something like the Aygo or a typical hatchback, as you open and close the rear hatch, the shock of closing the hatch over time tends to cause the camera to move a little bit, go out of alignment. So what I do is when I install these, having got the thing in about the right position, the final step is to put a tiny amount of clear silicone sealant on the magnet there and pop the camera into its mount, make a final adjustment, leave the sealant to set. And what that does is that helps prevent this camera from moving on its mount if you repeatedly open and shut the rear hatch. But it's not a permanent fix. It doesn't glue it in place. You can pull it off and peel away any residual sealant if, for example, you want to relocate the camera into another car. Okay, so that's the rear camera. And the final component that we need is the memory card. Make sure you get a memory card which is suitable for dashcam use. So this is a U3 spec. This is just a 32GB camera. Okay. Okay, tools that we need for mounting the dashcam, tools and other accessories. We're going to need a couple of these plastic trim tools to poke the cables behind the trim. We're going to need a small socket set. I've got a 3/8" drive here, and we use this for two things. We need to remove a small plastic nut, which is down by the driver's footwell, to remove a small trim panel down there to tuck the wires and the power supply behind the trim. And we also need to use a 10mm socket to loosen that bolt next to the fuse box to be able to tuck the earth terminal behind that bolt and then tighten it up. Okay, a few other odds and ends we might need. Well, a few cable ties. Got some excess cable. A couple of cable ties. And the other thing is we're going to, on the rear hatch glass, we're going to need to stick the cable in place. Now, Nextbase do give you some small black cable clips. They're not very good. They're not very sticky. I much prefer these larger sticky back clips. These have got a powerful adhesive on them, and I'd buy these transparent ones. They're not particularly noticeable once they're in place. You don't really notice them, and that just enables us to hold the cable in place on the back glass for the rear view camera. Okay, so this is pretty much all you need to do the installation. It's not a difficult task. Okay, in terms of DIY difficulty, it's probably a sort of 1 out of 5 level of difficulty. Okay, when we install the dashcam, we want to install our hardwire kit into the fuse box. Now, what I'm going to do is we have the fuse tap, and we're going to tap into fuse number 5. That's a 15 amp fuse which provides power to the rear wash wiper. The fuse box on these cars is up above my right foot. So it's up above your right foot underneath the dashboard. There's a white cover to pop off, and I'm going to try and get a shot of the fuse box in a moment to show you. It's rather difficult, it's rather hidden away. So this will plug into fuse location number 5, and then our Nextbase power adapter will connect into the fuse tap, and the earthing terminal will connect to an earthing point right by the fuse box, which I'll show you in a second. The power adapter itself, we're going to hide behind this trim panel down here just by our right foot. To remove the trim panel, we need a 16mm socket. There's a plastic nut to take off. 16mm plastic nut, and then the trim panel will simply pop off on 2 clips. It will pull away to the left. Okay, and we can hide the power adapter and the associated cabling behind this trim panel. The supply to the dash cam we can then run up behind the rubber door seal trim and along the top of the windscreen behind the headlining. So let's have a look at the fuse box now and how we make the connections into the fuse box and the location for the earthing terminal. So we're under the dashboard on the driver's side, and you can see the fuse box. I've removed the white plastic lid,
and you can see the fuse tapping, which is going into fuse number 5, which is the rear wash wipe fuse, and there's the red spur cable off, which plugs into the Nextbase power adapter. There you can see the earth terminal in the right hand side of the body shell, and you can see the black wire, which is the ground wire from the Nextbase power supply. So I just loosened that bolt slightly and tucked that fork terminal behind that bolt. Okay, so having connected the fuse tap into the fuse box, I've got the Nextbase power adapter bundled up with its wires down here at the bottom of the A post, and what I need to do now is replace this trim panel. The trim panel's held on by that nut and stud at the back, in the back corner, and we've got 2 clips there which pop into holes in the bottom of the A post. So I'm going to put that back into place. The power supply for the camera runs up behind the rubber door seal. Okay, so we run the camera cable up behind the rubber door seal. So let me put this back into place. Okay, so I've run the camera cable up behind this the rubber door seal. I've tucked it just behind the A post trim using my trim tool, and I've got a length of wire here which is about correct to go to the camera. Now the camera, remember, comes with a detachable mount. Okay, so the mount's held by a magnet into the camera, and we've got this sticky pad, and I know from experience that if I place the sticky pad around about there on the screen, that is a good location for the camera. So I'm going to put the sticky pad in place on the screen in that location, just avoiding the printing that's on the screen, and then I'll run the cable along to the camera base and then tuck the cable behind the head lining to make a neat job. So we've put the base in place. We can now detach the camera while we route the cable. The camera power clips into the socket in the side of the base, and now we can use our trim tool to poke that up behind the head lining. Okay, so we've tucked the power supply cable up behind the front of the head lining. We've tucked it behind the A-post trim, and then we just run it down the trim behind where the door seal goes. So I'm just going to push the door seal back into place now, and it runs down the door seal and behind the trim at the bottom of the A-post to the power supply. So that's the power to the camera. The other thing we need to consider now is the cable for the rear camera. So the cable for the rear camera plugs into this HDMI port on the side of the camera, the side of the front camera. So the front camera will lock into position, and we now need to route the rear camera cable. So we're going to plug it into there, and then we're going to take it off to the left behind the head lining and then down the left side of the car, just under the head lining on the left of the car. Okay, so now we're going to install the cabling to the rear camera. Now the rear camera comes with a sticky mount that goes onto the rear glass, and then this magnetic wall mount to hold the camera in position. Okay, so we can stick this to the glass and then adjust the ball mount. I've already cleaned the glass. There's a joint in the camera cable, and we're going to arrange for that plug and socket assembly to be inside the cabling that goes to the tailgate. Okay, So we won't stick this in just yet. We'll position this plug and socket assembly inside this coil cable, and then we'll connect up the remaining cables. We've got 6 meters here that goes down to the front. Excess cable will be bundled up and tucked behind this trim on the C-post. Okay, so we'll have the connector about there inside the coil cable. Now we'll route the rest of the cable along the bottom of the head lining and behind the door seal trim further down the car. So we'll plug the rear view camera cable into the side of the front camera, and we're just tucking the video cable, the rear video cable, up behind the head lining from the car. Okay, so we've run the rear camera cable behind the head lining at the front, behind the door seal trim, and then we've just tucked it along using the trim tool behind the trim in the rear passenger compartment. There was some excess cable which we've tucked down behind it here, right at the back. There are side airbags here, so be careful not to interfere with those, but the cable is okay if it's tucked down at the back. And then the cable just runs up through the hatch's rear coil cable to the connector in there, and we'll connect our rear camera to that connector. So we've mounted the rear camera on. I've pressed the sticky pad in place, position the camera in about the right place. We can alter its position slightly later. What we need to do is we need the camera to sort of sit between two elements of the heated rear window, so the camera should just be between those, and that means the sticky pad, the top of the sticky pad is visible just below the bottom of the rear hatch pressing here. We've clipped the cable in place with a cable clip, and then we're going to put a cable tie just at each end of the cable, just keep it in place. And we've put the cable tie just to secure the cable to the sticky pad mount there, stop the cable moving about. Okay, so the camera is now working. We can see a front view from the front camera, and then inset is the view from the rear camera. If we tap on the rear camera, that enlarges to fill the screen. That helps us adjust the position of the rear camera. Tap again and we're back to the dual view. So it's working properly. It'll pick up the date and time from GPS along with vehicle speed and location, and it will turn on and off with the vehicle's ignition. A blue light indicates that it's powered up, small blue light at the left, and a red flashing light indicates that it's actually recording, and we can start and stop recording pressing on the recording icon. So the job's completed.